It's tough to impress people with a robot. They're already among us, working in factories, saving people in emergencies, defusing bombs, driving cars, helping around the house, and much more. But what did it look like a few hundred years ago? Yes, back then there were also some kinds of robots, mechanical devices resembling a human or an animal. They played musical instruments, wrote with a quill, danced, roared, and performed other actions that could shock an ordinary person. Today we're talking about mechanical monks, programmable writing boys, a robot that beat Napoleon Bonaparte and Benjamin Franklin at chess, and other wonders from bygone eras. In the 18th century, humanity probably began to feel like the master of nature for the first time. One after another, the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology yielded to inquisitive minds, and the forces of water and air were conquered. Everyone thought that just a little more progress, and man would be able, like God, to change the properties of matter and turn the inanimate into the living. These ideas gave rise to a fashion for automatons, mechanical imitations of humans and animals, capable of mimicking various actions, playing musical instruments, dancing, writing, and drawing. Of course, the range of movements was strictly limited by their design, and it was almost impossible to reprogram the automatons. In any case, it was easier to build a new one. Various stories about humanoid robots existed even in ancient Greece, for example, moving statues. But a much simpler mechanism described by Philon of Byzantium, who died in 220 before Christ, looks much more realistic. In the book Pneumatics, he described a device in the form of a woman who held a jug of wine in one hand, and when commanded, by placing a glass in her other hand, she would pour the wine. They are not to blame for it. They are not to blame for that. They are to blame for being to blame. To blame for that. To blame for. Not to be to blame for not being to blame for what they are, To blame for that, they cannot be to blame. To blame for that, to blame for being to blame, for the fact that they cannot be to blame, can be to blame, for the fact that they cannot be to blame for moving their arms and neck. King of Spain. Felipe II, in 1560, ordered engineer Juanelo Turiano to create a mechanical monk. The monk could cross himself, lift a crucifix, move his lips, as if he was praying for the king. The figure moved on wheels, but for realism, it also had legs that could be seen under the robe. In 1737, French inventor Jacques de Vaucanson built a flutist whose repertoire included 12 musical compositions. The holes on the flute were covered in the correct sequence by mechanical fingers, since wooden fingers could not fit tightly against the flute. The craftsman used real human skin. Later, Vaucanson designed and assembled a duck from 400 parts, which flapped its wings, ate, digested grain, stirred it, and then defecated. The most important component for building automatons was the eccentric, a disc, or a sector of a disc, mounted on a rotating shaft so that its axis does not coincide with the axis of rotation of the shaft. This way, rotational motion becomes linear motion. Of course, you can't talk about delicate work without mentioning the Japanese. This doll is set in motion by strings connected to a mechanism similar to a clockwork. The eccentrics tighten and release the strings, making the doll perform various actions. This doll doesn't just move its arms. It picks up an arrow, draws the bowstring, and releases it. Then it takes a new arrow from the platform, which has changed position during the shot. Meanwhile, the archer artistically moves his head. In the 1740s, Archbishop Jakob von Dietrichstein built an automaton that was a theater with 200 figures on a single stage, all working at the same time. This is how he depicted the life of an ideal city. Coopers seal barrels, a bull is killed with a hammer. Builders lift planks onto buildings, while the aristocracy watches the common people's hard labor from above. Water in the mechanism turns a wheel, which, through several gears, transfers rotation to a drum. The drum contains instructions for each character. In this theater, automatons are closely connected with the art of clockmaking. As you can notice, It was almost always masters of this field who developed moving dolls. Many tower clocks with figures performing actions have been built around the world. For example, these are Prague's astronomical clocks. They were installed in 1410 and are the oldest working astronomical clocks. In the 17th century, moving figures were added to them: Death, a skeleton with a bell, and a crowing golden rooster. The most famous automaton in Russia is the peacock clock. Displayed in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, the clock was made in Great Britain in the 1770s. Every Wednesday, the head of the Clock and Musical Mechanisms Laboratory at the State Hermitage, Mikhail Guriev, winds them up, after which the clock runs for 8 hours. Catherine II paid 11,000 rubles for the clock. What was a ruble worth in the 18th century? At the beginning of the Catherine era, food prices were relatively low, but inflation was significant. The price of bread increased from 86 kopecks to 7. Selkovie were offered in the 1880s. Gears appeared in London in 1880. In the 1880s, in 1880 gears appeared, which in the 1880s were created for the purchased combined versions of online textile gears. We talked about voluntary teleclimatica, and they know how to perform at the foundation. Kuka Riku Pavlina was created by the London jeweler and inventor James Cox. Unfortunately, no photographs of him have survived. Another interesting work of his was a silver swan with a long, flexible neck, searching for food in a silver pond with fish. It runs for 40 seconds at a time, and during that period it seems almost alive, catching and eating a fish while working. Even the water looks real. It is made from rotating glass cylinders with notches of various shapes. In the 18th and 19th centuries, automatons were a form of entertainment for the wealthiest members of society. But these works of art were actually made by much poorer people, craftsmen who produced the components and watchmakers who assembled them. To make more money, they needed to sell more mechanisms and possibly lower the price. The trend toward miniaturizing devices began as early as 300 years ago, with watches becoming smaller and automatons also decreasing in size. Clock mechanisms that 500 years ago took up space in towers were reduced in size to the point where their much more complex versions could fit inside a doll's body, and then into a device the size of a jewelry box. Today, one of the most impressive examples of miniaturization is the thinnest mechanical watches. Their titanium case measures just 1.75 millimeters thick. 2 bank cards stacked together. That's 0.05 millimeters less than the previous record holder. What else do these watches have besides the Ferrari logo? Well, at the very least, a price tag of around $2 million. In the wild 1800s, of course, things were a bit different. An example of a miniature automaton is a bird in a cage made in the 1860s. Another remarkable example is the jeweled laurel tree Easter egg, made by the firm of Carl Fabergé in 1911 at the request of Nicholas II. He gave it to his mother, Maria Fyodorovna. After winding the mechanism, the lid of the tree egg opens and a bird appears, turns around, and sings. By the way, the Jacquet Droz company currently offers a wristwatch with an automaton. These watches with a singing bird cost 380,000 Swiss francs, which is 25.5 million rubles. Jacquet Droz is an old luxury Swiss watch brand. Its founder, Pierre Jacquet Droz, became world famous for creating interior clocks and automatons, not electrical devices, but androids mimicking human and animal movements and sounds. In 1784, an automaton was created in the likeness of the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. The doll moves its eyes, looks around, moves its head, breathes, and plays a musical instrument. Automatons not only played musical instruments, but were also capable of writing with a quill on paper. Of course, only very specific things. Reprogramming such a doll was not an easy task. The artist by that very master, Jacques Adreau, consists of 2,000 components. He is capable of drawing 3 pictures: a portrait of Louis XV and his dog with the inscription Marie, Marie Antoinette with Louis XV eye, and Cupid driving a chariot with butterflies. The mechanism's realism is enhanced by its additional actions. He squirms in his chair, nods his head, and blows away dust. It's hard to imagine how amazed people then must have been by this robot. A much more complex mechanism by Jacques Cédreau was called the calligrapher. The device is assembled from 6,000 parts, and the entire mechanism was placed inside the body of a doll. With a pen on paper, the boy carefully writes out the text, and after each letter, with his other hand, he moves the sheet of paper to start the next character, shakes the pen, and dips it into the inkwell. The symbols that the boy receives and writes on the paper are encoded on a round plate in the mechanism. This automaton is more like an automatic printing press or printer. What's amazing is that the master made it possible to change the text. The disc rotates, and the information about the symbols is transmitted sequentially to the operating mechanism. Inside the doll, a stack of eccentrics converted the disc's transmitted signal into hand movements. The Swiss watch brand, created by Pierre-Jacques Cédreau, still exists and makes these automatons to order, with production taking a year. In 1810, the English craftsman of Swiss origin, Henry Maillardet, built a drawing writer. He wrote poems in 3 languages and decorated them beautifully, and also drew images of Cupid in a garden or on the chariot of a Chinese temple ship. The result was pictures like these. Gaston de Camp, in 1907, assembled the automaton Zulma, the snake charmer. Here we see a girl opening her eyes, breathing, turning her neck, and a moving snake, all accompanied by music. In 1868, the American mechanic Tzadak Dederick invented the steam man, capable of pulling a load in a cab like 3 horses harnessed to the same carriage. Later, inspired by the steam man, the American writer Edward Ellis even wrote a science fiction novel, The Steam Man of the Prairies, in which people encounter a colossal man powered by steam in the American prairies. According to the plot, this steam man was constructed by a teenage boy who uses the steam man to pull his carriage during various adventures. Automatons could be used to make money not only by selling them, but also by deceiving large numbers of people. One automaton stands out from previous mechanisms, able to imitate humans, think, analyze, and make decisions. This automatic chess machine was called the mechanical Turk and was created by the Hungarian inventor Wolfgang von Kempelen in the second half of the 18th century. On the outside, the machine looked like a wooden sculpture, consisting of a life-sized mannequin attached to a wooden cabinet. According to its creator, the mechanical Turk was capable of playing chess on par with a human and even beating them. Was it possible, based on 18th century technology, to create a functioning artificial intelligence? Let's not build up suspense, of course not. But that doesn't make the mechanical Turk any less of an interesting phenomenon. The main advantage of the automaton was that a person inside controlled the Turk's hand, not just moving it, but actually grasping the pieces and moving them, as well as understanding where each piece was located. Thanks to the magnets on the underside of the main chessboard, this is an excellent example of an early manipulator. At the show's start, people saw the table's mechanism and empty shelves lit by a candle. The doors were closed, and the game began. During the game, the mannequin's right hand would pick up the pieces and move them across the chessboard, while its head seemed to follow the moves with its gaze. The automaton would announce a check to the king with a triple nod of its head. If the opponent tried to cheat, for example, by making an incorrect move, the Turk would stop playing and remain still until the mistake was corrected. Every 20 moves, von Kempelen would announce a break and wind up the mechanism with a key. News about the first steam-powered machine capable of matching a human and even surpassing human intelligence spread everywhere. After his first performance before the Empress of Austria, von Kempelen was literally flooded with invitations from other members of the royal family, nobility, and ministers. Von Kempelen, together with his chess machine, set out on a journey across Europe. During this journey, the mechanical Turk faced various opponents, almost always defeating them each time. Von Kempelen readily demonstrated the Turk's mechanical construction, but he never allowed anyone to touch anything, making excuses about the extreme fragility of the mechanism and the delicacy of its settings. After Kempelen's death in 1804, the machine was purchased by the engineer and entrepreneur Johann Mielzel, who turned the mechanical Turk into a real show, touring all over Europe and then the United States with it. He also made a number of improvements to it, in particular adding a sound device capable of saying, "check." The machine played against Napoleon Bonaparte, Benjamin Franklin, and even Charles Babbage, the creator of the first proto-computer, defeating all of them thanks to Melzel. These matches were widely covered by leading newspapers and magazines. The story of a thinking machine, of course, was too good to be true. Talks that the Turk was actually operated by a person sitting inside began almost from the very first demonstration of the automaton. The supposedly empty space inside the cabinet greatly troubled inquisitive minds. There was a theory that an experienced chess player could easily fit inside, watching the game through a system of mirrors and moving the pieces by reaching his hand into the mannequin. Edgar Allan Poe, among others, investigated the secret of the Turk. He studied Mielzel's apparatus as much as possible, and came to the firm conclusion that the mannequin was not an automaton, but a puppet controlled by a person sitting inside the cabinet during the game. His detailed analysis, published in 1836, convinced people that this machine could not function on its own. The analysis led to a serious decline in the Turk's popularity, and after some time, Melzel stopped receiving invitations to demonstrate the machine. After his death, the Turk was sold at auction and ended up in the Philadelphia Museum. That's when the true secret of this machine was finally revealed. In reality, the lower drawer and the left side of the cabinet, where the clockwork-like mechanism was placed, were designed in such a way that they only took up 1/3 of the space that they appeared to occupy. Both sections didn't reach the back of the cabinet, so a hidden empty space was formed inside. This secret space was equipped with a movable chair that could move from one part of the cabinet to another, allowing the operator to remain hidden. When Von Kempelen and later Melzel opened different machine doors during the demonstration, of course, in such a position, the operator could not observe the chessboard in any way. However, powerful magnets were installed under the base of the heavy pieces placed on the chessboard. Inside the box, under each square, there was a metal ball attached to a vertically stretched string. When a piece was lifted, the ball would fall, signaling its movement. As soon as the piece was placed on a new square, the magnet would attract the corresponding ball. The player controlled the mannequin's hand through a complex system of levers and cables, and also manipulated the Turk's head. Unfortunately, in 1854, the original mechanical Turk was destroyed in a museum fire. Now, a replica is on display there, connected to a computer, and it can actually play chess. The very name of the device has, in a way, become a household term. For example, in 2005, the Amazon Mechanical Turk online platform was created, which allows individuals and entrepreneurs to hire people to solve tasks that computers are currently unable to handle. There is this unusual automaton made by the Bulgari manufactory, belonging to the rarest caste of automatons that have almost completely disappeared from watchmaking. The figurine of the Venetian player throws dice in a random order when the minute repeater mechanism is activated. A truly unique, unparalleled set consists of a wristwatch and a matching table doll. When technological progress moved forward, automatons were forgotten. Their place ended up in museums, and in rare cases, they entertained people at various events. Fortune teller automatons were popular at 19th and 20th century fairs. They gave out predictions of fate on pieces of paper, pointed to cards or runes. Usually they looked like mechanical gypsy women, but there were other versions as well. These wind-up robots were made to appear in the famous British television series Doctor Who. According to the plot, the automatons from the 51st century tried to repair a spaceship using the organs of dead crew members, as well as living people. An automaton in the form of a severed human hand is on display at the Swiss Watch Museum. It is capable of writing not only individual words, but also entire sentences. The Undertaker's cabinet is an unusual automaton that depicts a full-fledged, frightening scene. When the coffin is placed in position, a skeleton's head appears behind it. The corpse rises from the coffin and turns its head toward the viewer. Then, the skeleton hides, and its place is taken by the devil. A tiger devouring a white man in the form of a British soldier belonged to one of the rulers of India in the 18th century. The automaton was created as a symbol of protest against British rule. In 2016, you could see a figure of Donald Trump with glowing red eyes on the streets of America, predicting the future of the country. Look into my crystal ball, and you will see the future of America. I see huge investments in a modern, high-speed rail system, very advanced, very fast. And we're using the new trains to deport 11 million illegal Mexicans. And by the way, I love Mexicans. I love putting them on trains like cattle. I build the best deportation trains. Believe me, my trains are the best. Soon after, the machine had already left its location. It was loaded onto a truck and taken away immediately. Shortly after the train, a video appeared on the internet, posted by one of the witnesses.
You look like a very, very recent immigrant.
That's the story about robots from the 18th century. That's all for today. Also, check out this episode where we've collected the most unique engines that you definitely haven't seen yet. This video is also interesting. YouTube chose it for you.